We're ready to go. I'm a few minutes late, but appreciate everybody's patience. So we will call to order the zoning commission regular meeting Monday, May 19th. We will appoint Ned for Will Fisk and Mike for Jerry Post and Vaughn for Derek. All right. So we have a quorum. That's good. I looked at the minutes. I actually had one change that I will read, but I'll give it to you also, which is that in the line 38 and 39, where it said Commissioner Pomeroy commented that he encourages a unified sign plan for multiple buildings in town. I do agree with that, but I would certainly allow for varied colors and use of logos, and we had that discussion. So that, and then Commissioner Post went on, he supports some variety in style and design, with the exception of outlandish color. So that was the only change I would suggest to the minutes. Any other comments or? All right, so with that, we'll adopt the minutes as amended, and I'll give you the wording. All right, thank you. Tonight we have public hearings. I don't have the actual call, but we will, since there's a limited audience here, we will consider and hold public hearings for application number 1422 of Paul J. Kochi, is it? Kochi, thank you. Owner for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section C.9 of the Simsbury zoning regulations for existing accessory dwelling unit on the property located at 46 Notch Road, map A16, block 503, lot 002, zone R40. We'll also hear the application number 14-23 of Ferg Jansen, applicant, town of Simsbury owner, for a special exception pursuant to Article 10, Section H of the Simsbury zoning regulations for a temporary liquor permit for a one-day event on the property located at the old Drake Hill Flower Bridge. We'll have that hearing now, and all those interested parties may come and be heard. So let's begin with Mr. Kochi. And we'll ask that you use the microphone and start by stating your name and address, and the reason for that is that this is being recorded.
Okay, Paul Kochi, 46 Notch Road, West Simsbury. I started this project in '94, and I don't know if you were around back then in town, but the building collapsed. The builders, it collapsed, the second story. So from there, everything went awry. Plus, I did it not with bank loans, so I was doing it in steps with cash. So first the building went up, then the upper half came down. It was originally just going to be for storage upstairs and an office. Then with the damage, and I hired a second builder and an engineer. The town had me get an engineer, and they changed the design to a gambrel roof, where now you have a big second story. And at the time, I started dating somebody that had 3 children. So I figured I'd use some of the space upstairs for that. And then at that time, I met the first inspector, because I ended up with 4 different inspectors over the course of the time. The first inspector his name was Campbell, but he left shortly after the collapse. And then there was Mr. Mariano, and that's who we discussed. We started doing all this with him, and then Pyramid Builders, of Simsbury built it. The whole outer structure and the just framing of the inside. That's what I did at first. The bottom was just a garage, and there was nobody in it. And then a couple of years later, I went to through the process of the sewer, the water, and then I was told at that point, in the 90s, you couldn't have one of these, like an apartment. So it was all set for subdivision. Oh, I forgot that. That was way at the beginning. It was Sanderson and Washburn. I brought a thing. I don't know if you need this. It was where they proposed to put it. you know, where we went, that was the first thing that was done, where they proposed to put the building and whatnot. And then I just kept doing it with the building department. I guess when I first started, it was just one department. In the around 94, 95, I understand, I think it split the zoning off around 96 or 7. But I stayed with the building department. I was basically unaware, but everything was inspected and whatnot all the way through. And then I became disabled. I got sick. So for about 3 years, I didn't do anything to the building. It just sat there. And the 2 children were upstairs in the building, and there was a bathroom. And the inspector had said, as long as you don't complete it, you had to leave one room out at the time, and then it wasn't considered 2 houses on the one property. So the kitchen was left out. All that was in was the rough piping and the flooring, but there was no cabinets, no sink, no refrigerator, nothing. And then around, after I got over what I had to do and got settled, around, I'm going to say 2010, I came back and said I wanted to finish and go from there. And then they said, well, you had to put fireproof sheetrock in the downstairs where the cars were. And then you can add, have the room and then come for your subdivision. So I've been doing all of that, and then I guess in the process of these 15 years, FEMA or something changed the rules. So they said you really can't subdivide it now that I had it all separate utilities, everything from the road. So I said, okay, so I'll deal with it and I'll do it this way. So that's why we're here now.
So
I'm going to do it as an apartment. It's over 6. I think it's 6.1 or 6.3.
So you're going to subdivide it into?
I was going to put the back. Originally, I built that building after the collapse. I decided, you know what? I collect cars. That's what the main garage was for. And I was going to retire back there and just sell the ranch. But that's out the window. Besides that, I have a relative that wants to buy it and tell me, he says, go south with your mother. So anyway.
So this is true, Hiram, that the property can't be subdivided into 2?
Apparently, or I'd have to go through a bunch of things with FEMA. I guess what I was told is I could pour another 3 inches onto the garage floor, and then the thing is added. It's 3 inches of the 100-year flood.
All right, so let's
3 inches of water
back
would win
up.
it.
So this building got completed sometime in the 90s or 2010?
No, the whole building itself has been up, and from the outside looks completely completed. But in 2010, I had the cabinets put in, and then I came in and I says, now it's a full house, so what do I do? And then the building, they sent, at that time, I think it was Hector, was the inspector, and he said you have to make the fireproof sheetrock on the top and on the back side where the stairs go up. I just did the whole thing to make it easier. The whole thing is done in fireproof sheetrock. And I called again, and I guess he was gone. I did it a year after that because I had saved up the money.
I'm trying to establish sort of when you started using it as an accessory dwelling. Is there?
Well, I was always allowed to have at least I was under the impression it wasn't an accessory dwelling yet. It still isn't.
Because
but
you haven't put you still haven't put the kitchen in.
No, the kitchen is in. I did that in 2010. So basically, I guess I'm in trouble from 2010. But I also went in and said, what else do I have to do? And then I needed to save up. It was $8,000 to put the fireproof sheetrock downstairs.
Did you get a certificate of occupancy?
That's what I have to go for after this is approved in here. They said that you guys had to approve it first. And then after 18 years in a collapse, I'll have a CO.
Is there anyone else, is there anyone living in this space now?
Just a relative.
Okay.
It's never been rented.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not relevant, but we'll ask the question anyway. It's not occupied for rent?
Nope.
Right now?
Never has been.
All right. But the kitchen is in and operating?
Yes.
Okay.
And right now, everything, it was inspected, there's a new inspector now. I think his name is Bill.
It's not important.
Okay, he inspected it.
Okay, for our purposes. It's important for the certificate of occupancy and other
he
things. But
approved-
we're trying to determine whether it's appropriate to grant you what's called a special exception permit to allow for an accessory apartment.
Yeah.
Because you have you basically want to have a primary residence and a secondary approved accessory apartment on on a single property, albeit 6 acres large.
Well, actually, I initially set out was to subdivide it, but I found
get
that out a few months back.
That's going to give you some cover here, I think, actually.
Yeah.
All right? But nonetheless, we need to deal with this. Now, does it, Hiram, have we looked at the size relative to the main house and all the rest of that? Is that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was going to suggest to the commission, I want to make sure, first of all, that Mr. Coach, you got everything on the record that he needs to get on with regard to information.
Okay.
I do think that there are 2 or 3 things that we need to resolve. One is the size of the units with regard to the structure. There are questions with regard to the building official, and I need to get something from Henry with regard to where they are with that process.
Yeah.
Secondly, it does have a sort of a long and, I guess I could say, checkered history with regard to the zoning and when the kitchen was installed and so on. And thirdly, there's a FEMA question here with regard to flood elevations, and I think that's been discussed with Mr. Cochi with regard to Mike Glidden.
Yes.
So what I would suggest is that if everything is on the record that the applicant has tonight, that we be allowed to answer those questions prior to your next meeting before you make a decision on this one, frankly. There are 3 intersecting things here, and I don't want to mislead you. It is complicated, and I want to make sure I get it really clear before I make a suggestion to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were the abutting properties notified before this public hearing?
Yeah, they told me to get this, that says the sign was out.
I need that.
Who gets that? Oh. And they said you needed this also, I guess, the deed.
That's great. Thank you.
And have we heard from any of them?
Saying I'd remain in one of the 2 properties.
Have we heard from any of the abutting neighbors in any way? They didn't show up tonight, but
I've not heard anything from them, Mr. Chairman.
no
They know-
correspondence
they know
or?
we've been there I bought the place in '93 from my parents. So we've been there for quite a while.
Is this in a floodplain? Is that the problem?
There's a flood elevation issue with regard to, I believe it's the basement and the elevation of the furnace in the basement. There's
Of the
a,
main house or the new house?
No, that's been rectified. The first thing you had had the wrong elevation. The furnace is 18 inches off the floor. I
just
think
need,
it only had to be 12.
just need to verify that.
But you gotta get a certificate from FEMA for that, which is not easy to do, right?
That's the question that I just need to resolve.
Yeah.
With, Mike Glidden is a certified floodplain manager, and so I want to double check with him and see where we are with regard to that. My understanding is that this afternoon, there was a minor discrepancy there, and again, before I give you a final recommendation, I just want to suggest that. So as long as we've got everything, that you need to put on the record, it is a sort of a confusing history, obviously. Kitchen was installed prior to permit. I think that's the essence of the zoning issue.
All right, so
Well, there was permits taken for everything. And as I said, the kitchen itself, its walls and all were there. I guess what I was supposed to get another permit to let them put the actual cabinets up and the sink, and then what do you call it?
the stove top.
Laminate.
The stove top?
And I didn't even think about it because it was already up, like the whole building was up, and I didn't even think about it. But after I put it in, I had called right away, and that's when I said, what do I do to subdivide? It's now a complete house. And that's when all of this started.
At some point in time, a building official said to you that if you put in this sheetrock, I'll give you a permit, right?
That was in 2010, the new
2010.
inspector said that's what
But you never
need.
put the sheetrock in, or
Oh,
you?
yeah, that was put in
But did you ever tell him you put the
in
sheetrock?
2011. I did it because I didn't have $8,000 at the time, so I
Okay.
saved
So
it
you-
up, took me a year, and then I put all that in.
So you put the sheetrock in, then you came in to get the permit he promised you, and the rules changed with FEMA.
I didn't hear about FEMA until like this last
No,
month.
it's a
It
little
just
more
came up at
confusing
the
than
end. I mean, the whole building, before it was sheetrocked, if I would've known, now I have to like wreck part of the building to put
Two
these
things
The
going on.
slabs
inspector was
in.
not, didn't have all the facts.
Yeah, so there are
right?
two things going on. One is that there's an anticipation of a subdivision, in which case this wouldn't be in front of us. It
Right.
would have gone to the planning commission and been approved as a subdivision, and then he would have had a qualified house built on one property and a qualified house built on the other property. But because he can't subdivide the property, now this falls into the zoning commission purview, which says that in order for it to be approved, it has to qualify as an accessory apartment. And it may or may not by its facts. And, so it's crazy. If you had two lots, if you got the land divided into two lots, then the building permit would be the building permit. As long as he complied with to get the CO, this would not be an issue.
But I guess I'm having trouble. How much of this property is with an issue with the 100-year storm or whatever it is with FEMA?
I don't have that.
I have the elevation should be in there. I think it said 305.5, and my thing is at 305.3. It's 3/10. In other words, if we got the 100-year flood, there'd be 3 inches of water in the downstairs garage. That's it.
Not in the habitable area.
No, the habitable area is 11 feet higher. It has an 11-foot
I'm going
ceiling.
through some of this stuff on another zoning commission I'm with, and basically what we're doing is somebody in the town, some official, is considered the person that won't let you build, or if you're going to build, how high you have to be off the ground, and that type of thing. And do we have such a person?
That's me,
That's you. Okay.
by charter.
But for the FEMA guidelines, it's not necessarily where you're living, it's where your mechanicals are too. You could be 5 stories up if your heating and cooling system's in the basement.
Yeah, that's the heating, no, it's 18 inches. I built it that way. They said, when I built it originally, they said 12, and luckily, that's what I didn't know until I looked the other day to measure, because I'm getting
All right.
picky now. It's up 12, plus they put it on 2 cinder blocks that are another 6 inches, so that's more than enough to clear what FEMA wanted.
Okay, so
So the furnace is fine. And the
I joked
electric-
earlier, I don't want to be confused by the facts.
Oh,
But-
sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. Again, off the record.
Believe me, how
Get
confused
myself in
I am.
But what I'm trying to determine is what are the possible paths to solve Mr. Kachi's problems? One would be, is there any way that FEMA will ever grant the subdivision?
It's not really a FEMA subdivision issue, Mr. Chairman, FEMA's an elevation issue.
Okay.
Subdivision issue has to do with square on the lot and a variety of other subdivision requirements.
Which changed between when I started this and now.
So that's not a path he can take to go back and appeal and try to get the thing subdivided?
That's correct.
Okay, so that path is
Yeah,
closed to you?
that's gone, so
Okay.
it's this, or, I don't know.
So what do we do if the size doesn't work?
The size is right, it's 25 by 40, 1,000 square feet, and that was the maximum allowed. I lucked out.
Okay, so if it will otherwise qualify, and we have really no strong objection from neighbors who've been notified, that's becoming a critical part of this decision, to me anyway, based on recent history. We would be willing to consider this application as it was made, subject to Hiram getting whatever additional information he needs, and then come back again. So I think, is there anything else that you want to be sure he gets on the record, Hiram?
No, I think that he's stated everything. I think the commission understands the sequence here that took place, and some things got a little bit ahead of where they should have been, and that's essentially what caused the issue. With regard to the elevation information, I'll verify that, and make sure that elevation is correct. Although I think that's a separate issue from the zoning issue, so that if the commission, for example, decided to approve this and the elevation issue, that would still have to be resolved with FEMA. And that's
With the building, to get a CO or whatever, those are issues that are not those aren't zoning issues, right?
Well, there is a section of the zoning regulations which apply, and I want to make sure that we're clear with regard to that, but as far as subdivision, those two are not connected.
If you could also bring a map and show us where the,
It was in the package.
Sure, there's a map, it's kind of hard to read because the copies are kind of poor, but I'll be glad to clear that up for you.
All right, so we will not act on this tonight. I guess I'd be, last chance for any questions.
So will we get a memo that just goes through all the regs for the zoning reg and which ones they need?
Exactly, and I had assumed when Mike was doing his report on that that's what it was going to read like, but it doesn't, so I apologize for that, but I will make sure that that's what happens.
Okay. And just a note to file that I'd like the five of us to be here when we do this again so that we don't have to go through, put Mr. Kachi through.
I understand they had another question, something about the driveway.
That's all set.
That's all set.
No new driveways have been created, we've been through that section of the regulation.
Right.
This driveway has been in effect, in existence since, I believe, 96 or something.
Yeah, 94. There was actually a trail in there before that, that went up the second driveway. That's how I got into that property to begin with.
That aspect of the regs is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So on this map, the building we're talking about is the one up
Right
here,
there.
not the one closer to
Yeah.
the house.
I can't see that.
Because you have two garage,
This is the house.
yeah, is this
Now,
built?
see this?
septic field?
This has been there since
Yeah.
'72. There's the garage. The only thing that's different with the garage is the doors are in the front and this overhang is on the side. They turned it.
Okay, is this built?
No, that's not a house.
Oh,
That's a septic.
okay, all right.
Okay. Another thing with the driveway is because of those trees in the pond, you couldn't use that turnaround to get back there. A fire truck and never get to the back. They couldn't
It's no
get to
longer
the back.
proposed gravel driveway exists.
They couldn't get to the back with any of the trucks that brought lumber or anything, so.
Right.
All right.
All right, so I'd be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, so that doesn't solve anything for you. All it says is that we've had the public hearing, we've allowed your neighbors to come and speak their mind. They chose not to. We will complete our process, not tonight, but at a subsequent meeting after Hiram prepares, or his staff, a memo that summarizes all of this, and he gets a few additional questions answered.
Now, do I have to come back?
I would suggest you should, but it'll probably be at our next meeting, which is June.
2 weeks from tonight.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
I guess my feeling is we're supposed to address the zoning part of this, okay? But if the citizen gets the zoning and then there's some building issue that shoots the whole thing down, I'd kind of like to know about that before I voted on the zoning part of it.
I'll have a list of them for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put them out on the limb and saw them off, you know?
Sure, I understand. Typically, what would say, if, for example, if someone were creating a new one, they would have to meet the building code, obviously fire safety code, so that if someone needed to get out of a bedroom, that the egress windows were the right size, or the doors were the right size, or whatever. So that's not an unusual thing anyway. It's a little bit different in that this has already been constructed, so, but I'll make sure I list those clearly for you, so you know exactly what you're...
Yeah, we shouldn't necessarily penalize him if the rules have changed along the way. On the other hand, if you went through some stop signs along the way.
I think the only thing was the kitchen thing when I hung the cabinets, because even the letter I have from the town says I did that. I don't know if you want to look at this. I bracketed this last paragraph. That I got that, I forget, I think in 2010. It says that I followed all of the rules and did what I was supposed to do, but for some reason. And by the way, this building has the right size windows and the escape route that you were talking about. They added that.
I hang on to that letter, that's gonna help you.
Huh?
I mean, all that's, yeah, that says that somewhere along the way, the CO wasn't issued, maybe could have, or maybe could not have.
I thought it was when the last inspection was done. I didn't realize you had to come in and ask separately for the CO when it was finally done. I thought it was done. until I heard from Steve. He says, no, you have to get us
All right,
CO.
we appreciate your dilemma. We'll
All right.
again, rectify this. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, application 1423, Ferg.
Sir,
Take your letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ferg Jansen, 3 Foxton Road, West Simsbury. I'm here to ask for your approval for a one-day beer and wine permit at the Flower Bridge on June 18th, rain date the 19th, to serve Naughty Nurse and draft beer and three kinds of wine to go with burgers and sunshine and music.
Yeah.
It's a fundraiser for the Old Drake Hill Bridge of Flowers. And if you approve, we're going to apply for a temporary liquor permit for that day. And we have all the sign-offs except you so far.
You've done this before, right, Ferg?
Sorry?
You've held this fundraiser before?
Yeah, this is the third. We did pizza on the bridge and then burgers on the bridge, and this was the third year.
Okay.
Has alcohol been involved in each one of those?
I'm sorry?
Was the alcohol involved with each one of those?
Yes,
Yeah.
we've served beer and wine at all of them.
Beer and wine.
And we've come here and gotten permission and all the signatures.
no one's gone off the bridge, right? We've been able to keep
I'm
everyone on the
having
bridge.
trouble hearing, I'm sorry.
The kids
Yeah,
in the summer.
Oh, none of the participants have gone off the bridge?
Yeah.
Good, okay.
They had a good
We don't
turnout.
overserve, we're tips trained, and
Yeah.
one per customer, just like the performing arts.
All right, so if anyone from the public would like to speak. Thank you. Any other questions? Close the public hearing.
close the
Public hearing.
public
Second.
hearing.
Seconded by Mr. Cosgrove. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll motion to approve application 1423.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You're approved.
Thank you all
All right, thank you.
We'll see you there.
Be good?
Can you guarantee the sunshine? All right.
What's the date?
That's why we have a rain.
June 18th.
Oh, no.
June 18th, 19th?
Unlike
Yeah,
Willie
just
Nelson.
rain- the 18th.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion of possible action on any agenda item. I think we already did that. And adjournment. We only have updates on any important properties, or?
Probably two quick things, Mr. Chairman. One is the code for the Hartford has been approved. I think I sent everybody an email on that. Take a look at it if you have a chance to. I'd like to get that scheduled for the June 16th meeting. Gateway will be back here from Texas to talk to all the land use commissions about that. Probably, I think we'll have that meeting in the library. There's probably a little bit more room for everybody to do that. Other than that, I think everything else is moving forward. There are no other emergencies that I'm aware of at the moment. Other projects that are moving forward, Dorset Crossing is moving forward, the apartments there are moving forward, West Street. We haven't gotten an application for the Powder Forest Assisted Living Facility yet, but I'm understanding that sometime this summer, that'll be coming in as well. They've had plenty of time to come forward, so should they come forward at the last minute, I will not be asking you for a special meeting in August.
And still no movement on Big Y.
My understanding on that, Ed, is that they're working out final details on that agreement. I did see an agreement a week or so ago, and they had, that is, the two parties had wanted to make sure that the liability with regard to road repair and things like that were addressed, and the town attorney had to look that over again. So I'm hopeful that by your next meeting, I'll have an answer for you as to whether.
Doesn't the town own that road?
Don't ask me the next question, because I can't tell you the answer. So.
What about our convenience store at the north end of town that wanted the beer license? Did he?
That guy, he's never going to get that off the ground.
Anything?
The old corn crib?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with Prime coming in now, too.
I will let the commission know that I've had some feedback on Mr. Schoenhardt's application. Just people in town are interested by it, good citizen, thoughtful applicant. What does this mean for me if I ever wanted to do this kind of thing? So I think that we really need to be thoughtful as we look at any revisions to that. I don't have any solutions. I think the issues of whether they charge or not is not a bright line, and that can't fix the problem, but clearly, when the neighbors come in numbers and speak to the character of the neighborhood, that's an issue for us, so.
We're going to see
But
more and
it's-
more of those, right?
It is, and we have something like this that I feared was going to be just right in the face of that. And it's really hard to not give permission and then, give forgiveness,
Right.
on the one hand and the other.
This is
If
kind
he
of
had
in the
said,
same
I'm gonna,
neighborhood.
if he had said,
Kind of in the same
Nah,
neighborhood.
it's a long way from, these are not even, huh?
Well, because, there's the other barn one over on,
This is way down the south end of town,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
This is,
I thought this was on the notch, so that's why we needed the map over this end.
no, this is almost to, Canton.
Canton.
Yeah, up by Egg Farm, right?
No, it's past
It's-
that.
What's past?
Yeah, Notch is about the last road you can get off.
Yeah,
before
it's
going
way
over
down there.
over
Way
the
down,
property line.
Okay.
Okay, that's, where the Central New England Railroad went through.
Yes.
Yeah, we were thinking it was down there, Shinnecock Notch.
You know, let me just say, without reference to this specific application, that typically how we find out about these things is some neighbor usually becomes disgruntled with something or other, whether it's cars or noise or kids or dogs or whatever, and that's typically how we find out. I know some people have called me, and whose opinion I respect, and say, there are 6 of these on our street that have no permits, and they're just fine. They don't bother anybody.
Yeah.
So, as we discussed this during the public hearing on accessory apartment reg revisions, I think the chairman's exactly right. Just need to give it some thought, and if there are specific things that you think we can plug into those standards that'll help us through that decision process, that's just fine with us. Because as we advise applicants in terms of what they need to prepare for and how they should present their cases, any of that insight would be great help.
I mean, hey, listen, if you live in a neighborhood that they're in favor of it, then
You're good.
You're good then. That would never fly in my neighborhood and many others in this town. So, again, all case by case, I guess. And I think, but one last thing, the big differences are he's not telling us that he's going to rent it out to make money on it.
Right.
He may down the road. We can't control it.
Yeah, but
right?
so that's what I say. Mr. Schoenhardt was very upfront about that.
He was, yeah.
And the rules, the way they're written, don't differentiate at all between
Right.
the two. And I wrote one citizen a letter, just said that, it's to deny someone who wants a family, friend, or caregiver to live in their house and help them, to deny that seems cold and heartless. On the other hand, the regulation looks at that the same way as the person who brings in, one family in a
Yeah.
facility that has 3 pickup trucks and 4 dogs, and that changes the character of the neighborhood, so.
Because once you approve it for the family member, they still have the approval to rent it afterwards.
Right.
The change goes with the property.
Right.
That's
Well, if it's sold, they have to come back in and
And we-
reconfirm.
Yeah, but we confirm
Do
that
they?
someone's there.
Yes, they do. But they have to,
Okay.
there's a bias towards approving it as long as
Yeah.
it's owner occupied. That's the biggest control factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a big control factor. And the idea, but the flip side of that is that it has to, not change the character of the neighborhood. And that's one criterion, which there's,
But I mean, does someone look at property sales on a weekly basis to see if any of the properties that we've given, this type of approval to have
the
changed
attorney
hands?
should. The attorney who gives title insurance to the buyer should be protecting the buyer, who says, boy, this has an accessory apartment in it, and it's not approved. I've looked at the land records, and I don't see that it has the permit. That is a control.
But
It's
that
not a
whole
perfect
title
one.
insurance thing has gone up in smoke.
Well, forget title, I mean, my attorney would not have allowed
Right.
us to buy a property that had that feature without a valid permit. Or he would have
Something in
advised us that if you buy it, you may not be able to sell it as having that property.
Because with a zoning violation on it, should somebody get
Yeah.
belligerent and decide not to fix it, technically, we could lien the property, on the land records.
But it does seem odd to me that the installation of a kitchen, a sink and a stove, changes what is just additional living space into something that can create a problem for someone.
And when you
Aren't you
think-
allowed to have two kitchens in a house?
No, well, it's an interesting thing, because, you go back to like a lot of old ethnic things where there's a
Italians.
summer
My
kitchen and a
my
winter
family, I grew up with
kitchen.
two kitchens in both my grandparents' houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and typically, if there's a door in between that's lockable, then you've got a separate unit. There's really it's very difficult to tell, that extra living space, and it becomes with a kitchen in it, becomes a separate unit. The food preparation facility is really the key. That's really the thing that changes that unit, so that's what
There
it
were
is.
many two-family houses in Hartford that were three-family houses. They were renting the attic. I mean, this is not unusual, but I think the expectations of the people when they buy a single-family house in a single-family neighborhood is that that's not going to change on them.
Pasture Lane was a good example of that. Those, by and large, those neighbors did not
Yeah.
really.
It's interesting, I actually, another town that I worked in quite a while ago, they actually had a 3-story house. It was actually stratified. All the landscapers lived on the first floor, all the kitchen, people that worked in the kitchens of restaurants, local restaurants, lived on the second floor, and then the night watchmen lived on the third floor, and they were all very stratified, ethnically and racially and everything
That's a
else.
hierarchy?
Yeah, I don't know if it was or not, but they were
All
very
right,
upset.
we're looking for a motion for adjournment.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right.